Hey, and welcome to my whiskey den. Thank you for stopping by this week. This week we have Fred Swanson from Dancing Goat Distillery on, and we're going to kick off the intro because sometimes I ramble too long before we do that.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3.
All right, and like I was saying, we have Mike and Ben here, like we always do, and Fred, the national brand ambassador for Dancing Goat Distillery in Cambridge, Wisconsin, which is southeast of Madison, kind of west of Milwaukee, kind of almost dead center in between. Maybe I'm a little bit off by a few.
Yeah, we're 25 minutes from downtown Milwaukee, straight east on Highway 12, and probably 45 minutes south and a little bit west from South Milwaukee.
Yeah. So kind of right in between those two.
Absolutely.
And we were lucky enough to have you on because I know when we talked to you last for the Distill America an evening with, and thank you for coming on that. That was wonderful to have you and Casey, Adam on for that one. But you were talking about wanting to explain the whole kind of solera and kind of barrel aging process that you guys have. And that was something that I was excited to. I mean, I know a little bit about, but I didn't know the entire kind of like barreling process that you guys did. So I know all of us here were kind of excited to hear about that process. So do you guys start with like normal barrels and then switch over to the French Limousin oak, or do you want to go and I can just let you go and not jump in with a bunch of questions either?
Oh, don't jump in anytime. Just cut me off. I'll fill the first hour without stopping. I could. But no, we go into, and one of the things that we were very intentional about, and what Nick, when he started the distillery, Nick Moss, was very, very intentional about, was we didn't want to be just another American craft distiller making a rye. We wanted to do something very, very different. We wanted to do something very intentional. And we did something very intentionally different through our wood aging process, so that we would have a different story to tell. We had the ability to do that. We had the connections to get different types of woods that we knew would influence our product such that it appealed to rye drinkers as well as people that didn't think they liked rye and typical bourbon drinkers. So what we do is we go into once used vintage barrels. Okay, so our vintage barrels could come from Jack Daniels, they could come from Big Kentucky, they could be Four Roses, they could be Jim Beam barrels, et cetera, et cetera. We're currently right now with some Chattanooga whiskey barrels. Okay.
Nice.
We ended up getting some really, really nice 2-year-old vintage Chattanooga whiskey barrels, which are, if you know anything about barreling, 2-year-old barrels are damn near brand new. Mm-hmm. So we were very fortunate to get a bunch of those. So we're going into those barrels initially. Okay, so they're once used. Then we're floating oak staves, French Limousin oak staves, toasted at about 2.5 years. And then we're finishing in that solera system for an undetermined amount of time because we bottle and proof to taste. So everything gets pulled out, gets run between 45 and 50, and all the half points in between. And then when the distillers and the tasting panel decide that they feel that it's optimal, that's when we bottle. And we bottle at that. So we bottled at 45, 47.5, 48, et cetera, et cetera. That typically is not weeks, but typically not tons of months. Okay? So it is a very much rounding finishing process that those barrels lend themselves to. So you've got Quercus Alba, which are the white oak from the U.S., which are your typical bourbon barrels. And then you've got the Limousin oak, and we have 2 varietals of the Limousin oak. So we've got a 16-barrel solera system, which is 4 high by 4 wide, and they're plumbed together vertically.
Okay.
And there's 2 channels of each of 2 different types of oaks. There's Quercus Sessile and Quercus Robert. Both are French Limousin oak, just 2 different varietals. And then we took those, they used to hold red wine. We carved down to the red line and toasted the insides to re-toast those. We get a lot more vanillin out of that and way less tannin by our wood aging process. And when we bought those, we had them deconstructed, brought over here, recoopered, and then built back up. They're about 10 times the cost of an American oak barrel from either Arkansas or Missouri.
Okay. Well,
It is and you know, it's not a typical solera system because they tend to be triangulated. Okay, where you pull the top one and then they cascade down. Ours are 4x4 and they're vertical. Okay, they're plumb vertical. So, and it's just another resting, rounding mechanism that our wood aging process gives to that liquid.
and I was going to say, and it does the whole rounding process. You can tell right away by having, when you first have this, that it doesn't have that kind of sharp, pitchy, slap you in the face rye flavor to it, which is I was really happy with, especially when I first started trying ryes. This was kind of in the beginning of them, and one that I actually liked because I don't like black licorice. Everyone who watches the show knows that I have an issue with that. But I was gonna say this one was it was candied, it was light, had a lot of other flavors, but it was this nice, like, rounded to the whole thing. So definitely hit that on the head with that. So I was very pleased with this. And now that you mentioned kind of that little bit of a wine thing and bringing the chart or the wood back down to like where the red was. Now that, of course, power suggestion, I'm getting a little bit of that in here today too as well. So that it was a really neat process, and I'm glad you kind of helped explain that, because I automatically in my head thought, triangle tier, just right off my head when we were talking about that. So,
and we're talking about building a second solera system at this point, and it may be a very different structural system than what we have now. Those barrels are really hard to come by. They don't get out of France. They don't get out of France today at all. But they don't get out of France easily. There is a French appellation to them where typically they go onto the French market first, which we don't have bidding into. And some years you can get in, some years you can't if you're outside of France. So what we're looking at is just what are our options going forward? Can we do something a little bit different?
That's cool. Just 1 second. We're going to add a couple people in the chat. Ice House says he's drinking some Limousin right now. I saw Arthur Lopez was out there. Nathan Clark, Eli Cook, thanks for stopping by. And that's as quick as I can go, spinning up and down without wasting half our time on that. So thank you guys for showing up. What is everyone in the chat? Post what you're drinking, kind of like Ice House did, and we'll see what you guys are having. Now, I know you guys, when you first built, I don't want to say Dancing Goat had big dreams, but I kind of thought that was the purpose, was like, if I'm not right, in one of the articles I read, it said you guys kind of wanted to play with the big boys at some point. Like, that was kind of the goal, rather than being a small distillery. It was to get big and bigger faster.
We are a distillery built to hand down through the Moss family for generations. It is an homage to Nick's grandfather, Dwayne. And Nick's father, Tom, is one of our other owners. Tom lived at Wild Turkey for years and years and years. It has deep roots. The Moss family has deep roots in brown spirits. And without going into that a lot in detail, they wanted to build an homage to their grandfather, Nick's grandfather, and then be able to hand this down for generations. So we are not your typical small mom and pop startup in a garage. We are originally a 19,000 square foot facility that's adding 19,000 square feet as we speak onto the back. So
that's what I was getting into. I knew you guys were expanding recently.
Right.
I'll get to that in a second, just because I don't want to lose this thing. Nathan Clark from the chat said, have you considered getting used barrels from an American distillery like Balcones Rumble or like a Westland peated or something of that nature, rather than just from trying to get French Limousin oak barrels?
Well, all of our first barrels that we used for over 4.5 years are all American barrels. Okay. Those are all old bourbon barrels, typically, even though we've had some Jack Daniels barrels. But you have to remember, we will be buying semi-loads of barrels. Okay, so that kind of prices us out of some small entities. It also answers the question of what are you going to do with all the barrels afterwards, because we're going to have to unload semis of barrels as well. And it's really hard to unload a semi-load of barrels to one barrel, one brewery, one at a time. So we'll do some of that locally, and we'll take care of that need, but we're also going to have to be very cognizant of where can we buy large quantities. So Chattanooga was one, okay, that is very similar to a Balcones, very similar to, I think, the other distillery that we mentioned. But we would absolutely be in the market if we could get enough of any of those. I don't know that a peated barrel would be anything more than an experimental barrel for us.
I can
But
see that.
we just spent an entire month at the end of 2019 just playing with yeasts. Okay, the exact same mash bill and screwing around with yeast, champagne yeast, distiller's yeast, tequila yeast, rum yeast, and just looking at what's it going to do 4.5 years down the road. Everything else being the same, what are those yeasts going to do for us? So we're in the business of screwing around with barrels too.
Yeah, that's cool. We're having Alan Bishop on in a couple weeks, and talking to him, and he plays with yeast. It is kind of ridiculous, but he's very good about it. But let's get back to the expansion. That's going on. Like you said, you're adding on 19,000 more feet. This is, come on, computer, a picture of the distillery that's there right now. I was going to say the inside is very sharp. This before the expansion. I was going to say I love the way you guys did the inside, and we have that giant fan in there. And I saw you guys were doing this on the kind of like the expansion wall. You're making like a used charred inside of the barrel wall.
Cave wall, yep, and that's finished. That's all done all the way up to the top now.
Nice.
Our distiller Chris and one of our assistant distillers nailed that. Okay, it is between Ben and Chris. They crushed that wall. They're both woodworkers, and it was a labor of love. They really, really wanted to add that accent wall. And that's not maybe the last accent wall that we do in the new expansion. We may do another accent wall with barrel staves up in the classroom that's going to be on a canopy in the back of the brand new part of the distillery.
There's going to be a classroom.
It's going to be a classroom. That tap room, tasting room, front room is going to start to function much more like a gathering spot for tours, a place to meet for when you've signed up for a class, Saturday at 2 o'clock. You can certainly sit at the bar and get a cocktail, but the emphasis is going to change from coming out and having a cocktail and it operating like a bar to it operating like an educational facility where we're teaching classes, where we're running you through on tours, and we are going to we're taking some of those tables out, we're putting big, huge education tables. You kind of remember, I call them kindergarten teacher tables. They got that belly bump in the center of them, and they're like comma.
Yep.
We built one of those out of our friend Jamie built all of our tables, and he built it out of a huge sawn down. I think that was an oak tree that it came down. So just a gorgeous piece of furniture. All of our merchandise is going to be re-merchandised. But we're going to start having classes out there. It'll be everything from gin schools to how to make cocktails classes.
That's cool. That's excellent. I didn't know you're doing that. That makes me pretty excited. Now, also with the expansion, I know you guys purchased Death's Door, like the label of it, or what was left of the actual stuff that was there. And I also heard you took some of the stills, but they needed a little bit of work and some TLC to them after the 10 years of process to them. Are you guys planning on keeping any of the Death's Door product line since you purchased that? And for those that don't know, that was Wisconsin's biggest distillery at one point. So.
Right. Absolutely. Right now, we are planning on keeping just 2 of those products. We're going to keep the gin, and we didn't have a big, huge thought process about the total product called Wonderment, which is a high-end peppermint schnapps that I think Death's Door hit an absolute home run with that product. But quite honestly, it was overpriced. It was overpriced on the shelf. People are not going to spend $15 more. There's no such thing as a high-end schnapps drink. So they'll spend it at the right price point, but they won't spend $15 more on that product. They will spend, and they will. It has a cult following. What we've got is a product that we might have to make 2 times a year instead of just 1. But that gin was and is our focus. That gin is going to be what allows us to continue to be able to expand. The gin is in 50 states, 10 countries, roughly. Limos in, I think, 29 states right now. So that gin is our lead blocker at this point for expansion. And that was a very intentional, purposeful purchase to get us to that point, to be able to not only have a gin, but to bring that gin back to where it was when it was 12 years ago when it came out. You could theorize that that product started the American craft gin movement. There were other gins that weren't London Dry, but they were called Hendrick's, and that was not an American gin. Mm-hmm. So when they came out, they reset the bar, and they got people that didn't think they liked gin back into gin. So it's a big product for us. We're expecting it to be bigger. we're not doing anything more than just taking it back to where it was originally, cleaning up processes, continuing to learn about the product, and continuing to, tangentially, incrementally make it better.
Oh, that's excellent. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, just had to get another taste hidden in there. Sorry. Give you a chance too. But yeah, I was gonna say, with that, are there any other brands or types of whiskey you're planning on coming out with soon, or is that later down the road, kind of past that experiment idea?
Right now, our focus is on that rye, but we have dozens. I don't know if it's upwards of 100 yet, but we definitely have dozens of experimental barrels. We have corn whiskey in there. We have bourbons in there. We have different types of ryes in there. You have to remember that the Limousin rye is a braided mashup of 3 mash bills. Okay, so it's a 95.5 rye to corn. It is a 51.49 rye to corn, and then it's 51.44.5 with 5 being the malted barley. And those are all braided together. Now, limo over the years, everything that's in the F14 and going forward is all roughly 5.5 years old at this point. D14, which I'm drinking right now, is somewhere between 4.5 and 5 years.
Okay.
So everything for us going forward will be over 5 in the limo.
Nice.
And we still have the ability to play around with those 3, mash bills, because we're aging everything exact same. So when I tried our 95.5, finished exactly the way limo was, and at cast strength, I was blown away. Okay, I mean, we have a bunch of different threads. I mean, it's similar to kind of the statistical anomalies of Four Roses with all the mash bills and all the yeast.
Mm-hmm.
We just have that with different woods, mash bills, and aging. So we've got the ability to kind of play around within those as well. So
cool. I
we
think
are playing around in other brown spirits.
That's fair. I like that. I was gonna say it'd be neat to see that on the back of the barrel or on the bottle. You're like, it's this, and this. Especially with, like you said, getting a little bit of a different flavor profile from it. So that's neat. Or like the punch out of it.
Well, we're starting to see more and more people are embracing that 95.5 and are really kind of looking for it, and that's why the limo has started to lean heavily towards that.
So I've got a question about your process itself.
Sure.
How willing to be, or how transparent can you guys be, and how much is proprietary that you guys won't discuss? I mean, obviously without telling anything.
That I'll stop at a certain point. I'll definitely stop at a certain point. What we want to be is we want to be a company that people look to as a celebration company. That people say, God, you know what? I'm going home tonight. Just got an A in my paper. I'm in grad school. I'm going to crack open the limo. Okay? We want to be there for that celebration. We want to be there Friday night when you made it out of the emergency room and you made it home safe and your kids are in bed and you want to tip one back because you're back home safe as a healthcare worker today. We want to be there when you're celebrating because it's Tuesday, for Christ's sake, and you made it through Tuesday. So, we want to be there for weddings and funerals, and we want people to tell stories about us. We want to be a Wisconsin product that reflects our generous spirits and our, by and large, gregarious personalities and attitudes as Wisconsinites. So by sourcing as much as we can organically in all of our grains, Wisconsin for limo, we want to be able to tell that story as a Wisconsin story. But I will stop when it gets to a certain point about certain things.
That's fair. There's some people won't even tell you the mash bill stuff, and I'm like,
if I'd stop.
Huh?
Did you have something in mind, Mike, that you wanted to ask that I might just say no, I can't answer that to?
Well, no, you talked about the solera process itself, but is there, are you doing anything really different than anybody else, or is it just this is what works for you?
Oh, first off, we don't think that there's another solera in whiskey the way we're doing it in the States. Typically, a solera system is a rum system or a red wine system, by and large. Okay, and ours is certainly not a traditional solera system. When we make no bones about the fact that there is no black and white answer to how long it sits in there. There is no prescription to how it sits in there. There's no recipe. It's all just tasted on a weekly basis, and then it's stopped, and now we're going to start to look at the points and all the half points because we think it's done. So that's one I'll stop at because I won't tell you if it's weeks or months, okay? And certainly not years, but definitely we're looking at that. And it's just that rounding that solera system does. It's just that it's one more way to soften those edges of a rye.
That's what I was curious about with coming up with the solera system that you're doing. What was the thought process that led you to tackling that, to doing that? Was there a moment, was there something you tried, or you said, you know what, I think we can make this work for our whiskey? Or what led you guys to that? And then also, what are advantages? What are traditional aging techniques?
I missed the second part of that because
you kind of trailed off for a second there, Ben. Sorry.
Okay. What are the advantages to using the solera system for you guys, and then what are disadvantages compared to, say, traditional aging techniques?
Oh, absolutely. So the analogy that I like to draw a lot of times is there is right now in beer, and there was 4 or 5 years ago, this whole push towards massive flavor, just mass flavor, tons of hops, tons of malt, tons of this, tons of that, and we got away from Pilsners were no longer cool, blonde ales were no longer cool, and amber was no longer cool. And it was all massive flavors, big hop punch in the face. With brand new oak, you could argue that there is a very similar process that goes on. You get this big, and then if you start to bottle it at 2 and 3 years, it's all big flavors, and I'm not sure that they're arguably better flavors. What we wanted less tannin. When Nick sat down as a flavor guy, the way he talks is he wanted way less tannic influence on our liquid. And how do you go about that? Okay, and how do you bring up the vanillin content, the vanilla notes? Okay, how do you bring up all that other cinnamon stuff? You do it by reducing and releasing those tannins in somebody else's product. Okay, so and that's not to say they're bad. If that were bad, Scotch whiskey wouldn't have figured it out 300 or 400 years ago. Okay, rum wouldn't be in one-use bourbon barrel. We're not doing anything different or brilliant. Everybody else has already done it. We just knew that the chemical science behind it, or Nick knew the chemical science behind it, and it's reduce the tannins, bring up the vanillins, try to get away from the glycols and all the other off flavors that can come out of wood. And I think that's the answer to your question.
Okay.
So let that barrel sing a different song in chapter 2.
And I think that's something we're really missing in American whiskey. Typically, is just reusing barrels. Everybody wants to get that new American oak with those big flavors, and I don't know. Some of the ones I'm starting to try where people are using that, it's distinct, it's different, and it's really nuanced. It's really nice.
Right.
Yeah.
We're trying to tell a story of balance. We're trying to tell. I think you would be hard pressed to have a conversation with any of us at the distillery without us talking about cocktails almost first. We are constantly telling people that this product was built to cocktail with. And that's why it's proof at 47, 48, 49. Okay? It's proof at that so that, during dilution, then it sits at 40 in your cocktail. So it's really hard to make a good cocktail with 40. That's why everybody takes old granddad bottled and bond as their rail. There's a reason. So, we're emulating and we're telling our own story through the stories that we've learned from others. And balance is not a bad thing. Balance is never a bad thing.
Question from the chat. Eli was saying he knows that Blade & Bow is a solera system. Is there anyone else in the U.S. or a well-known U.S. company that uses solera that'd be worth trying? I don't really know too many other ones that do.
Blade & Bow, I think, is very different than ours because I think their liquid is solera afterwards as well. Okay, versus, so I don't know if all their threads go through their solera, if there is a solera that looks like ours. I'm just unclear. I just know that they tell a story of solera now that I think. So, other than that, and the reason people don't do it is it's a whole nother set of money costs. It's a whole nother line item. I mean, our solera system, when you're talking 10 times You're not talking hundreds of dollars for barrels. Now you're talking thousands of dollars per barrel. Okay, suddenly you've got $16,000 to $20,000 just in wood, and you haven't even built it.
It
So
does.
there's a reason people aren't doing it as well.
And Nathan was saying most Solera products that he's had taste like new make spirits. Given your extensively used barrels, is that true of all the products? Sorry, I was reading the wrong side. I should be reading on the right side instead underneath you, Fred. Sorry about that. Given you use exclusively used barrels, is that true of y'all's products as well?
Nathan's in Texas.
Nathan's in Texas. Yeah, so I'm sorry, Nathan.
It's funny because I know Nathan Clark up here in Madison as well, and I thought that was who was on. But Nathan from Texas, I think that ours tastes of a softness and a balance that does not come out of new wood. Okay, and I think that I know that comes first and foremost, primarily from our once-used barrels that they spend the majority of their lives in, and secondarily, it finishes on that Solera.
He also wanted to know how many uses do you get out of your barrels?
We use those once.
Just once? Okay.
And then they may go into a syrup program because we also make barrel-aged maple syrup, and we're going to start making barrel-aged honey, all to cocktail with.
Okay.
The barrel-aged maple syrup is in our house cocktail, the Maple Smash, and the barrel-aged honey may in fact go into something like a bee sting with the gin or another product with the limo. Our uses will be that. Our personal uses after one will be syrup and honey. We'll sell to others for other uses. I just had the first beer that came out of one of our barrels out of Microphone Brewing. It was an Imperial Stout with coffee and vanilla. Afterwards, it was phenomenal. And it was, I mean, a lot of times if you drink a bourbon barrel-aged stout, there shouldn't be balance in a bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout. That doesn't make any sense. But there's almost too much bourbon note in a lot of it. Mm-hmm. This one didn't have that because it was a second-used barrel versus a once-used barrel that he put his beer in. So he aged it much longer, and the bourbon note in it was reduced but very present. And his beer was what was shining in that product. So we're going to do stuff like that. We're going to find homes and breweries for those barrels. We're going to find personal homes for honey and syrup for them. And I don't know after second use how much you're going to get on a tertiary use out of those barrels in a distilling process.
Here, I was using the maple syrup on my pancakes.
It's really good on cakes too, isn't it?
Yeah, I was. My son and I were both very pleased by it.
Absolutely.
My wife had a question about it. Well, how much bourbon do you think is it? And I'm like, not enough for it to matter. No, I was like,
not at all.
He's like, because he really seems to like it.
I'm like, for both of us.
Yeah. But yeah, she's like, you both seem to like it about the same amount. Like you like bourbon. He's really into that syrup. I'm like, you know, he might grow into my shoes. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
That's true.
He'll probably inherit some bottles at some point. Oh, sorry. The chat's active with questions for you, Fred. Sorry about that.
Uh-huh.
Let's see here. Basically, Arthur wants to know what spirits does Fred Swanson like to go to in his spare time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't just drink ours, and none of us at the distillery just drink our stuff. We're big proponents of our stuff. We buy it out in the community a lot. I always tell a story. I was sitting at Bourbon Fest with six of us. And it's like 2:30 in the morning. You pulled all your chairs out in front of your hotel room. You're still going, and it's that dumbass question that always comes up at the end, and it's usually something along this one. And I asked myself, and I said, okay, last thing in your food cooler, bourbon or scotch? And it was evenly split amongst the six people. 3 people were bourbon guys, 3 of us were scotch guys. The scotch guys, to a man, could tell you what the answer was to the next question, which is, what bottle? Mine is Lagavulin 16. The other 2 guys were Highland Park, and somebody had a Strath Eagle. The 3 bourbon guys have yet to tell me, and this was 12 years ago, not what the bottle is. One guy said, can I just say 4 Roses? No, that wasn't the question. The question was, so bourbon guys are very fond of tons of bourbon. If I had to pick something besides limo, it's Lagavulin 16. It's what reminds me of my father, and it's what takes me back, and I can bring his memory up immediately, just with that glass in my hand.
That's nice.
Very cool.
No one in the chat's gonna crap on leg 16. That's
I hope not. I drink a lot from my friends the Henry. Okay, I like their bourbon a lot. If you like big, powerful, flavor forward, dark bourbons, they're your distillery. I like Four Roses for balance. Okay, I got Four Roses barrel select that's out right now is worth all $55. You can't argue that away. I don't know that I'm as enamored of store picks as everybody else, even though I've done one. I really like the store pick Wild Turkey that I did. I like Wild Turkey for the exact opposite reason that I like Four Roses. Wild Turkey's unbalanced. So, it all depends on the time, the moment, the night. But if I had to pick that last bottle and, I was going into quarantine with no bottles with me, it was a Lagavulin 16 besides them.
not bad. I dig that. And the Four Roses I've always been a fan of. That's kind of what jumped me off of just the Jack Daniels train of being like, I remember I'd go to shows and stuff, and that would be the one where my friend and I'd be like, oh, it's a good show. We're going to break out the Four Roses before we go to the show, rather than just drinking Jack Daniels there and at the show. And I was like, then I got told, like, I kind of saw something on the Whiskey Vault where they were having an argument where trying to persuade one guy was picking 3 bourbons and he was going to convert the Scotch guy, and the other guy was going to pick 3 Scotches and convert the bourbon guy. And then I had 3 of the bottles that were in the fight, and I'm like, my taste must be better than what I was thinking, because I did not realize that the 3 of them would be in the battle to try to persuade someone the other way. So that made me feel a little bit better about myself that day.
Well, it's funny because every time I've done a store pick, and if it's a mix, typically now store picks are all from one distillery. Okay, and you get 3 different barrels, slides that come back to you, and you're trying the like product. 20 years ago when we were doing barrel picks, you would get from your distributor, you'd get something from Wild Turkey, you'd get something from Four Roses, and you'd get something from Heaven Hill. And the minute you tried to put those together, every single time Four Roses suffered. Not because it was bad, it's the reason that double IPAs win best of show in fucking beer competition. Not because they're better, but because they're big flavors and people remember them. It's way harder to make a Pilsner than it is a double IPA. It's way harder to beat Four Roses than it is, somebody's barrel proof up at the top of the rick in the middle of the sweetest spot, 6 years old, sun beating down on you. Yeah.
This is
At
lovely.
the same time, how lucky are we in Wisconsin to have such great distilleries? Okay, I mean, I can point to 20, 30 distilleries in Wisconsin. I can find a product in every single one to answer AJ's question another way. I can answer that in a local way. I can say, I go to this guy and I like his rum. I go here, I like his red. I go over there, I like his bud.
Yeah, it does seem that a lot of every distillery will make several things, but they all kind of have their flagship product that's a little more unique than a lot of other people.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's I've noticed that at a few places where I was like, I'm not a huge fan of the whiskey, but I'm like, but like you said, but your rum is tasty as hell. I'm gonna go home with a bottle of this. So, I know I'm supposed to take a bottle of this home. We'll see if I have money at the end of the day. This is going in the bag first.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the fun thing about traveling. That's one of the reasons that there's 200 wineries in Wisconsin. Okay, not because people don't travel, it's because people do travel. Wine tourism. Distillers are getting to that point where you go to Madison and you pick up a bottle of J. Henry, you pick up a bottle of Limousin Rock. If you're in town from Charlotte, North Carolina for business back in the day, you pick up something locally. I do it when I go to Charlotte. I try to find something there to put in my luggage and come back. Surprising my wife or not. Okay.
And that's where I was getting with
you frozen.
Distilleries in general. I was trying to pitch that to people. It really is a tourist thing. I'm like, it is like wineries and stuff where rather than they just make something, it's a place you want to go now on vacation.
And that's what we're trying to do out at the Goat. We are trying to be Little Kentucky for people on the off years that they don't have time or money to go to Kentucky. So we're building rick houses. We're in the process of starting to build 5 rick houses, hopefully within the end of this year. We're adding almost 20,000 square feet. We're becoming an educational and a storytelling facility. We're going to be a place to do celebration. We're going to be a place that people want to come to, not just from Wisconsin, but people to say, oh, what the hell is going on in Cambridge? There's 1,400 people there. And there's a distillery and a winery. So,
yeah. Or even like that, like I said, you're kind of nicely positioned between Madison and Milwaukee. Like, well, if you're there, it's worth the day trip out to check it out, you know. And it's not a ridiculously long trip to get there, because that's the way I travel. Is I want to go someplace for a reason. Like, if say there's a music venue, a show, something I want to go see, a distillery I want to see. When I'm down there, I want that to take up part of my vacation time. Then I'll go wander around the city after I have my bottle full of empty Pepsi and filled up with my own personal choice of drink, you know, like wander the streets. I used to do that in Chicago a lot. You know, I think my friend and I went down, we picked up a bottle of Caval and like, well, you know, filled up a little drink mug of like what it was, a little travel thermos, and like, well, we'll walk the streets now. I'm like, yep. You know, see stuff, enjoy what's going on. I'm like, but then you're also getting like a little flavor of the city you're in. I know Ben's got one that if I ever go down to South Carolina where he is, I'm gonna forget what's the name of this. Is it 6 and 20 that does that rye?
6 and 20 does the heirloom rye. That's a fun little tour. Small distillery, but you know they put out some quality product. And then 2 hours up north, you've got Grand Wagon Distilling does the Rua. So I know you'd love to hit that one.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, I mean, we're still in the infancy of American craft distilling. We're still all pulling on the same end of the rope. I mean, if you talk to the brewers that have been craft brewing for the last 25, 30 years, and they're still local, for example, the Great Dane here in Madison, they will tell you that one of the saddest parts of where they're at now, almost 3 decades into beverage production, is they're all still friends, but when they started, it was them against big beer. Now it's them against their buddies because beer has gone hyper local. Okay, so now everybody's friends are all trying to pull 6-packs and shelf space and sales from each other, and that's what makes them all sad. I think American craft distilling is going to go local to a point. Okay, it's said forever that we're not going to take every single bottle purchase out of Big Kentucky, but if we can kick at their shins and take 1 out of every 4, doesn't matter what state you're in. You can be in Nebraska, you can be in the Carolinas, you can be in Wisconsin. If you take 1 of 4 and you buy 1 of your 4 local, that's a win for local. If you sub your vodka with a local vodka and stop buying Tito's, okay, and you buy 1 bottle of Tito's a year, 2 bottles of Tito's, but you buy 4 local, that's a win for craft distilling, a win for all of us. So, we can't ignore tourism because we're an agricultural tourism product. And we have to learn from what wine and beer have already done before.
What you're mentioning was that my one friend owns one of the breweries up here, and he was saying that how it, like you said, it used to be like just getting your stuff everywhere, and now it is kind of hyper localized where a lot of people, if you're from Milwaukee, you just try to drink beers from Milwaukee.
Oh, absolutely.
And like up here, it's like there's like Green Bay has like 8 breweries now or 9. And it, you get kind of sectioned off where you're like, we're trying to represent here and kind of like laying a stake to a section. And I'm like, they're like, it does become problematic because you almost are like, you feel bad about forcing your way into another spot, or almost like, he's like, my one friend's like, I kind of want to jump the state and go try to hop into Minnesota or hop into a different state rather than trying to force my way into other parts of Wisconsin.
What scares me is that, our landscape is going to look completely different when we come out of this. It's going to look completely different for restaurants. It's going to look very different for breweries. It's going to look very different for wineries, distilleries. There will be people that won't make it out of it. Okay? There will be restaurants, beverage producers that don't survive. I can't imagine how hard it is right now to be closed and your entire business model was out of your tasting room or your tap room.
Yeah, or the extra, like you said, like a lot of them create the experience of showing up with a restaurant or like making it a whole day stop, and that's more of like a revenue stream to get you to a certain point. And if you don't have that, I thought the same thing. There's a lot of people that are gonna just kind of, you might see it might be the first crash in distilling that I wasn't expecting for a little bit longer. You know,
I was expecting it 5 or 6 years ago, for the same reason that American craft beer crashed out first time. American craft beer crashed out in the late 80s, early 90s, first time, because people were undercapitalized and they were making marginal product. There's still people that are undercapitalized in craft distilling, and there are still people that are learning their system. Okay, I don't say that in craft beer much. People have figured out their equipment in beer. People are still figuring out the art of distilling, their equipment, their model, what story they want to tell, what goes in the glass, what's optimal. They're still figuring that out in craft distillation. I would have thought it happened. I was saying at the beginning of Distill America, I'm surprised it hasn't happened. But this is going to be a craft crash for a whole different reason. I think people are going to, we're going to see a landscape very different.
Yeah. And on that note, just with Dancing Goat, a bunch of other places are already doing it. Are you guys doing the whole hand sanitizer thing as well too, as part of something you could do?
Yeah, we looked at that with very different lenses over time. We closed down before the state closed down, and we closed down when we didn't have the right permit, the denatured alcohol permit, to actually make it legal, and we were not willing to put our actual production license, our DSP, at risk to make hand sanitizer. And then, of course, the landscape changed within 48 hours. So because we're on the eastern edge of Dane County, and there are so many people making hand sanitizer and sanitizer in the rest of Dane County, and Madison being the biggest city, what's not being taken care of is Jefferson, Whitewater, Fort Atkinson, hospitals, clinics, PDs, fire departments east of us. So we're trying to take care of those guys because we might be the only one in their backyard, in their neighborhood. So Nick has been out there by himself producing all of this, making all of this in a socially isolated, completely legal, by the books, Wisconsin quarantine fashion in 5-gallon buckets that we are giving out to those entities. And eventually, once we get those entities out, we will start to entertain other folks. Okay, that may still in fact be open, and those might be some restaurants, some breweries, some stores that still need sanitizer. So once we hit the most important of the important, and people that have come to us to reach out, we will make it, and we will try like hell not to trumpet our cause.
Nick sounds like he's like one of our friends up in Canada who has a distillery, and his wife took a picture of him. He had a sleeping bag, and he was sleeping on like a 50-pound bag of corn. And he was sleeping at the distillery like that. He's like, I didn't think it was going to come to this, but this is what I'm doing right now.
This is what I'm doing right now. And we're also trying to help other distillers out just because of our scope and sequence and our scale. We're trying to help other distillers out that are also making hand sanitizer, allowing them to be able to get neutral grain spirits from us as well.
Nice.
We're trying to take two different passes through that story.
Oh, that's good.
And we are not going to say who those are, because those guys can tell their own stories about how they're being heroes as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Us is just fine.
And now they're saying, like I said, there's a lot of them out there, but I think it was Great Lakes and you were the only two people I saw that weren't doing it, and they're like, nope, I'm going to get my hands slapped if we do this right now. So we are not touching it with a 10-foot pole. Then, like you said, it was because I told my boss at work, I'm like, they really can't do that per se is what they're supposed to be doing. And then I had this 45-minute dissertation talk to him about it. Then I walked in the next day and I'm like, I lied to you. That's all changed today.
That's right. Everything is different.
Yeah.
And it's not like we're like a really large boat, distilleries are like really large boats. Once you shut it down, it's hard to start it back up. And it's not an easy ask to shut it down.
Yeah.
Okay, to shut down for Christmas for 2 weeks, to shut down for a cleaning regimen. That is an intentional act that takes weeks of prep to make happen.
Yeah, and
when we shut down, we didn't do it lightly.
Yeah, that's not fun at all. Well, I mean, it's good for people to get away and get a break from everything every now and then. But like you said, it is intensive to do something like that.
Well, I will tell you right now, we are all missing each other like nobody's business. When you enjoy and love the people that you work with, and you don't get to see them anymore, and you only get to talk to them on the phone, there's not a lot of us that tell those stories about places that we work. And I just happen to be lucky enough to say that I love what I do, and I love who I do it with, and who I do it for.
Yeah.
And we miss each other terribly.
So, how many people work at the distillery?
There's about 10 of us.
Really? And because of that size that's a manageable size for getting together. Do you guys try to get together online, virtually at all, or?
We have not done any virtual happy hours, but because we're also under construction, we have at least 2 and sometimes 3 conference calls a week with our contractors and our subs for the construction portion of it. We do 1 or 2 team meetings a week by phone. Most of the guys have families, kids, a few have kids. A couple of us are old, grizzled kids out of the house, oldsters. So we're all kind of in different places. But there will come a point in time when we all get back together and we'll be out on that distillery, and there'll be nothing but slaps on the back and big hug. So.
That's awesome.
Excuse me. Anyway, Jeff had a question here. He said, Beer Capital Distributing just posted 1,000 barrels of out-of-date beer. Any interest in using this as a base?
That Whispering Jeff, quiet guy in Wisconsin. Whispering Jeff, the answer to your question is we are going to Frank Distributors first, because they're our Madison distributor, because they made the exact same plea to us. The RBA is taking a bunch of what will be expired half barrels, 6-stools, and quarter barrels, and they're going to redistill that. And we are in the process of figuring out how we can do that as well. So nice. The answer is not a 100% yes, but the plea just came out this morning. I dealt with it in a phone call about 10 o'clock, and we have every intention of helping out our distributor. And Capital Houston is our Milwaukee distributor, and I would bet that we have every intention of honoring a conversation there as well.
Nice. So it's always nice that you're like I said, you guys seem like you're helping as many people as you can at points. So
we are trying like hell because we're a little bit different. We're at a different point. We want to be a leader, and we want to help where we can, not just within the industry, but in all the different things that we've done to partner as far as environmental causes and whatnot from where we're at.
So I have a question for you. I think you're in a unique position to be able to see this and maybe offer some perspective. But when we had Blake from Seelbach on last time, from my perspective as a consumer mainly, I'm looking at, we had 8-10 years ago, you have the whiskey boom, the bourbon boom really explode, and you see a lot of stocks dry up. And so a lot of the big guys have amped up production. You've also, in this time, you've seen a huge explosion in craft distilleries. So a lot of these are now starting to get some age, 6, 8, 10 year in a lot of the craft distillers. And you're seeing even some of the big distilleries like Baker's bourbon. That's changed. It's coming out as a single barrel edition. You kind of start to feel like we're on the verge of stepping into, I would say, almost like another golden age of whiskey, where there's going to be some remarkable, amazing whiskeys coming out within the next few years. Do you see that as a possibility? And then with this whole coronavirus impact, does that change everything?
I think it changes because I think, unfortunately, there will be people that will not be able to continue. Okay, so I think our numbers will be down. I cannot see any other way. I don't see any way that everybody in the state, in the country, makes it out.
Right.
So, and if you look at the 4 scenarios that we're operating under, it ranges from 2 to 3 months at the least.
Yep.
To 12 to 18 at the most. And people are leaning towards the most side of that. But the scientists are sitting on 12 months is not unrealistic. 12 months is unrealistic to sustain a small mom and pop distillery, probably. Right. So with that said, one of the things that I think we're trying to do is recognize and be nimble enough to adjust so that we're not putting all our eggs in a basket of a 12-year-old rye whiskey, okay? Or not bottling at 2 years old. I think both of those are spectrum conversations. Trying to sit and say, this is where we think optimally this tastes better. Right now, we are absolutely convinced that the 5.5-year-old juice that's in limo is better than the 4.5-year-old juice that we came out with, and we were not nonplussed by the 4.5 that was in there. We enjoyed it. Does that mean that we're going to let it go to 12 years and continue to push that forward? I don't think so, but I don't have an answer. So that's one answer to that. The other is everything changes, and I think you have to be able to not put all of your eggs in any one basket, and you have to have enough depth and breadth and enough SKUs to talk retail language to be able to withstand the economics of this whole thing. So you can't always just have a 5-year-old bourbon. You can't always just have a 2-year-old bourbon. Having a gin, having a limousine rye, having a vodka, that'll help stem the tide of craziness. But at the same time, it gives us potential into all these cocktails, into what people are drinking. 20 years ago, nobody was drinking bourbon. Okay, we're a vodka country. Are we going back to a vodka country? Nobody knows. Yes or no, unequivocally. I think what handcuffs a lot of brewers, I think what can handcuff a lot of distillers, is to thinking that they can set up a business model on bourbon geeks and beer geeks. That is not a sustainable business model. You have to sell to everybody. Okay, less than 10% are the uber enthusiasts.
Right.
Everybody else pays your bill. So when you have to sell to everybody, you have to look across that and say, people are like, yeah, rye's really big. I'm like, yeah, it's 5% of brown spirit sales. 95% are people drinking bourbon. How do I get bourbon drinkers to like this rye? It's called the way we would aged it. It's like we're trying to have those conversations. Those are intentional. And that I think will get us, it'll get all of us, distillery by distillery, into a better place. Look what happened in Scotland. There were so many, Scotches that hung their hat on that 12-year-old age statement, hung their hat on that 14, and that slot went out, and then there was non-age statement on a bunch of stuff. Okay, a lot of it went by the wayside. A lot got bought up. You're going to see a lot of attrition and a lot of people getting bought out. It's already starting to happen.
Yeah. Well, like you said, if it goes to that 12 to 18 month time frame, I would even maybe wager like half of the distilleries don't make it past that. That's a long time. Even if you do have decent kind of set up, going through a couple different options there, that's a long time to kind of lose some of that other revenue streams that if you were depending on them, it's pretty crippling.
It is.
But you guys also do some of Travis Hayes' stuff where it's like cherry pie, a couple other things like that too. Am I right?
We have a bottling plant over in Pewaukee that acts as a rectifier, and we also own the Hobby Pilot Tour products. We bottle those over there. We do contract bottling over there. We do a lot for the duty-free market. We do a lot, Lake Wisconsin Blue Brandy, Full Boxer out through Harbe. So we're also somewhat vertically integrated at Dancing Goat. In fact, we own our own bottling plant as well. So we didn't have to buy another bottling line. We can share those costs with others. So I think we bottled Ernie Ells' crazy boozy wine thing. So, we do a lot of weird products over there and fun stuff. And that's a lot of people right now that are being employed. I think there's 100+ employees running 2 different shifts over there, which makes us feel really good.
Yeah, that's a lot of employees in a bottling plant. That's really nice.
Living wage jobs, big footprint, a lot of product going on there.
Nice.
Cool.
But yeah, I was going to say, I thought that was, you guys are doing independent contracting and stuff. That's another way to help create revenue streams as well too, to stay alive. So that's really good. Hey, Vito's in. Nice to see you, Vito. We don't usually see you too much now that he's back living at home or in his own house. He's getting some free reign to do stuff again. It's good to see him out and about.
It's officially an international audience now.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Where is Vito?
Toronto.
Yep.
Nice. I think one of the things too that'll help us to weather any sort of timeline that this virus may have in its mind for us as a nation is we're going to start experiences like gin school So we're buying 20 small individual stills. So you can come out and spend the afternoon with us, take your bottle of gin that you made home,
Nice.
figure out botanically what you wanted. We'll save your recipe and you can come back and order more, and we'll just make more for Christmas gifts or whatever. But we'll save your recipe for time eternal. So we're trying to create those types of experiences at the same time, simplifying the distillation process down to where people can kind of understand it because it's sitting right in front of them on their table.
That's cool. That's really neat to be able to, like you said, almost bottle your own product is
right.
I mean, that's a level of pride thing once you come up with something good. You know what I mean? That's pretty sweet. I'm not really gin guy, but it does make me want to taste a few to be like, well, maybe I can hone in on something.
It's really funny because I am so much more likely to be able to have a conversation with somebody that tells me they don't like gin with our debt store gin than I ever will be to flip a Tanqueray drinker into our gin. Because our gin sits closer to a different animal than it does to that London Dry. It's still gin. But I think just the fascination of distilling something and then you can give it away as a gift. But it's also something you made, you're sweating in it.
I've had some other people that like gave away like limoncello and stuff like for Christmas. Like, oh, I made this, and I'm like, that's just cool. I mean, just giving away a bottle something you created is pretty sweet, and being able to put your, even if you guys don't do the labeling, be able to go home and make your own label, slap that on the front. Might not be, don't resale the shit, but I mean it's pretty nice to get away with something like that.
Well, and once we get all this done, the first of 5 25,000 barrel rickhouses will hopefully be built in the next year, and that'll be part of the tour. Is that our production will hit a point where we're doing about 5,000 barrels a year, and then that rick is full, and then in 5 years we can start talking about emptying that rick. So that's the reason for 25,000. That's the reason for the new still that we're talking about at 5,000 barrels a year capacity, and that then is the same family that for 3 generations, 100 plus years, has built all of Big Kentucky's rick. So it's the same family that comes and builds on site. They build a mill right there. They put it up within a month, and we're going to do a time lapse thing over the whole thing. You can see it on our website. But to be able to show people the exact same ricks, there's one in Dallas right now at a distillery. There'll be one in Cambridge, Wisconsin, and the rest are all in Kentucky. We're not talking Cleary buildings. We're talking the living, breathing buildings that bourbon was meant to be housed in.
Yeah.
So, and people forget that is such a component of aging, is the breathability and the construct of that building. There's a reason they're built that way.
Well, and on that note, when you get to that scale, you're going to be having like the sweet spots we were talking about, and with how well you guys blend the Limousin rye between the 3 mash bills you do now, I'll be intrigued to see what you're pulling out of those barrels and creating at that point, because you're going to be getting a bigger variance and kind of, like you said, kind of nail down, like it's almost like a Limousin rye select or whatever for a year. And those, I think, will be pretty damn impressive.
We're kind of, people are like, why don't you guys do store picks? Why don't you do bottle picks? Well, we're so different that, our dump is X amount of barrels because of the solera system. Mm-hmm. What we're more apt to do, and what we want to do more of, is you get your buddies together, get your liquor store together, come in and distill with us for a day. Then that barrel's yours. That barrel will be yours. We'll sit down, that'll be yours, you own it. You figure out how many bottles you need to sell, who's going to take what. We'll figure out a way to legally get it to you through a liquor store. We're going to try to do different things that way.
So that's almost
get you to the same point.
So that's almost like Dingle did with their Founding Fathers program, where you go in, they distill it, you pick the kind of the barrel you want it in, and you guys will sit on it until you think it's ready, and then you could. We're in. I'm already speaking for them. I'm spending their money right now.
Travis was very generous 3 years ago and made 4 barrels for Distill America, 2 in used cooperage, 1-year-old cooperage, 2 in brand new cooperage. We've never done anything with new cooperage, okay? Which is why at Distill America, the Dancing Goat table, you can taste new make, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, next year to be 4, and you can see the progression all the way through. Mm-hmm. And then once we get to that sweet spot around 5, we're gonna hopefully be at a VIP thing. We'll be able to give away 375s or 200s to people that are in the seminar. So we are very lucky, and I work for some very generous people.
That's what I kind of dug that about the table with Distill America was you could actually see the progression.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times it's just this, and you could see kind of the rounding and the deepening of notes happen as you go through it. Suggest you do that early or midway through. If you're trying to hit that up at the end of the night, you might not get all the subtleties of that.
The subtleties are gone.
Sorry, just trying to persuade some Canadians to come down to Distill America.
There we go.
Which is, it'd be well worth it for him. It's like I was telling other people, it's surprisingly affordable compared to everywhere else. So
you have no idea. And now that we dodged a bullet with Distill America by weeks.
Yeah.
That event would not have gone on if it were 2 weeks later.
That's true. I didn't even think about that. I was just
because I don't know that we could have paid our bills.
Well, that would have been fair. That would have been. I mean, 90 different people or distilleries coming in. I mean, that would have been a heck of a lot. So, I didn't realize how close that was.
Big time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did it because I would be very disheveled come that time next year.
Yeah, we have to talk about that for next year. We got to figure out a better insurance plan. And Fred's credit card is not scenario one. So says Fred's wife.
Yeah, I was going to say Fred's wife probably is not kosher with that whole idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Fred's going to get out a platinum card. Like what?
I also put on a very large beer festival for 10,000 people. That's in August this year, which is very much in the crosshairs. But there was a year that two of us put it on our credit card, and we're both still married. I mean, it's one thing to put 1,600 people on your credit card. It's another to do 10,000 on your credit card.
Well, that's faith. It's good. Yeah. Well, cheers to your wife for letting that happen because I'm happy that all worked, man.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting about an hour in, and we don't want to keep you too long or anything like that. Like we usually try to stop about an hour in because we don't want to hoard too much of your life. I'm sorry, what?
If there's more questions, I'd be happy to stay in.
Oh, well, that's fine. Let me spin back through the chat here. Well, and if anyone go ahead, Mike. But if anyone in the chat has anything, just pop a question in. We'll throw it up on the screen, and we'll go through some other questions.
So, you said you guys are going by, the taste for the Limousin rye. Mm-hmm. When you say it tastes good and it's ready. Have you ever discussed a limit, like how far you would let it go?
No, because we haven't gotten there yet. We keep aging it, and we have not stopped it, and we have not stalled it. Okay, so right now those initial second use heritage barrels are still out there. Okay, so we're just adding time to them. It'll be capitated at some point, I'm sure. I tend to be one of those people that believes ryes tend to age a little quicker than bourbon.
Yep.
I'm also a believer that I don't have a lot of time for bourbon that's over 15 years old.
That's fair too.
I think it loses a lot. I think there's a lot of interest to it. I think it's fun to talk about. I don't know that it's optimal. So with that said, no, we haven't gotten there yet just because we don't have the time in. But I'm sure we will. Where we're like, oh no, we need to sit here for now.
Yeah, I agree with you on the rye definitely because that's usually where I tell a lot of people up here where bourbon you can't usually hide it around 2 years. Some ryes at even 14, 16 months to 2 years really aren't too bad up in Wisconsin age-wise. I was going to say you already kind of covered up some of that. If there was a green barrel note, it's kind of either been covered over or is already kind of worn away depending upon the barrel that they use, if it's air-dried or not. But bourbon, I usually think it's got to be like 4 or 5 here. But like you said, if you get past 15 with a bourbon, I always feel like you're getting into this price range where you're shooting exclusivity with it. When you're putting them out, and I'm like, well, then all of a sudden it's $120, $150, and then it had better be fucking wow at that point for me, you know, like, and I've, you know, I'm not crapping on Pappy, but
No.
I use Pappy 15. Is that where people are like, is it worth the $1,200? I'm like, well, I got a bottle like last year at a lottery and it was $120, and I'm more than happy to share with people and be like, we were down at Madison for Distill America last year, and my I don't know, what is it, my niece's husband, I don't know what he is, otherwise that would be called, but he was like, oh, I kind of want to try it, and I'm like, well, not at $60, you know, an ounce for it. Like, we'll just go up to my room. He's like, what? I'm like, well, just here, you know, see what you think. Well, I was, you know, really impressed by it, really liked it. I'm like, but for me, it wasn't $60 an ounce or an ounce and a half. I'm like, I'm like, I looked at him, I'm like, do you know how many bottles I could go buy at, like, downstairs tomorrow if they sold bottles for $60?
Sure.
I'm like, a whole bottle, enjoyment for everyone and your friends. I don't mind that one experience for yourself or a couple of people. I mean, I get that if you're going to have that amazing wow factor, but at that price, it had better wow me.
Right. And we're also trying, you know, when it also kind of gets back to what I was talking about before about being a company built around celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
You priced yourself out of most people's ability to celebrate. You know, I don't want to be your special Christmas bottle purchase. Okay, I want you to come down because you ran out, because you drank the one from last week. You know, that's what, you know, at $40, you're already you're out of so many people's price points the minute you hit the $40 price point. The minute it's at 40, the majority of buyers are out in brown spirit. And we're trying to be very cognizant of that. You know, the minute you hit $20 in peppermint schnapps, you are out of everybody's price point.
That's exactly right. It's like, ooh, $25
really
for that.
$35 schnapps.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're like, you know what, Dr. McGillicuddy's for $13.99 is not that bad. You're like, so, but yeah, you're exactly right. There is a price point there that for a lot of people, and I think not all the distillers look at it that way. They almost want to be an emblem of like superior taste or something like that, rather than being something like affordable for the masses. I mean, I think that's more important is overall resales, like you said, being able to come back and get it and not being afraid to do it. Like, there's some bottles I've gotten a couple times where I'm like, that was wonderful, but I'm gonna go try something else at $80 a bottle. Like, there's more things in the world to go to. And if it's at a price point where you go back and you're like, I'll take this and this one with me and walk out with a Dancing Goat and this other one to try, I don't know. It's more fun for me that way.
It's more fun that way. Doesn't mean we're not going to have special releases. Doesn't mean we're not going to have more expensive bottles. But when you build a distillery around cocktails as your ethos and you proof your products so that they push through in cocktails and you price them, you can move a lot more bottles than you can for people just drinking neat. And if you're at liquor stores and you're at bars and those are your partners and they're telling your story for you, that's how you're going to be a much more viable business. I mean, I can sell a lot more to a restaurant down the street than Mr. Smith on Main Street's ever going to buy. So, you know, we're trying to look and how do you tell that story through all of your partners.
Well, in hearing what you've told us about with the whole aging process and your approach to this, I mean, the way I'm hearing it, it sounds like you're really showcasing the distillate, the grain, more so than the oak, which I really, you know, I can enjoy both sides of it, you know, and I love to explore all facets of it. But with that, and the fact that you're sourcing grains locally, are there other specific grains you're interested in or that you're looking at in using or you know, experimenting with? You know, you're hearing a lot about heirloom varietals here in the last few years people are playing with. So I'm just curious, are there other grains that either you have an interest in or things you're doing?
I think first and foremost, we would love if we could get an absolute rock solid hold on Wisconsin organic barley. Okay?
Yeah.
We can find Wisconsin barley. It's really hard to add that organic into it and then get enough of it to be able to make an all-organic product with a little tiny bit of barley that's in the limo. So it's an organic process, but we would love it if we could get enough farmer partners, because we're working with roughly 30 farmers in Wisconsin, and pulling out millions of pounds of grain every harvest. So I think our first cut would be, in a perfect world, can we find somebody to make us enough organic barley? And then can we find enough weird, odd, fun heirloom varietals so that we're not jumping all over the J. Henry story? Okay,
Yeah.
we're doing our own thing with our Wisconsin heirloom heritage varietal, and we're doing a special bottling. That would be fun. And we've talked about that, and we'll continue to talk about that for sure. Anything that we can do to help our Wisconsin farmer partners and keep them in business with grain in the ground, we're absolutely committed to do.
That's cool. That's what we were finding, some of the other like unique ones like that. They do have such a different flavor tone to them, but some of the ones we looked at recently, like some Jimmy Red Corns and stuff like that, where the people who use them invested a lot of time into producing them so they could use them, like you're talking about. That also becomes a part of the story.
Oh, absolutely. And we have done things with Bloody Butcher and Blue Hopi. We've done other, we've got barrels of those oddballs out there. We just haven't committed to a product to highlight those with a story behind it. We've already played. We're going to continue to play. That's one of the great things about working with distillers that don't mind operating without a net. It's just fun. It's just fun. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You still made alcohol.
Now, how much do you get to be involved in some of the decision-making process or suggestions into some of the things that are going on and being produced? Do you get
suggestions are summarily ignored. No, I mean, I am not on that on the production side. Okay, so I'm on the storytelling side. I'm at some level the guy that travels Wisconsin, travels the country to our markets, along with some of the other owners, and we are out there, as the faces and the storytellers of the brand. I just give feedback when it gets to a certain point. Okay. But I had zero feedback in what went into that bottle, okay, initially. I did feedback on what I like about it now. I've given feedback anecdotally on the gin that we've run, which I believe is heard. I think people are listening. Chris knows his way around gin. Chris Biles knows his way around gin. And knows his way around the whiskey rocket. And the new Vendome still is going to be cool as hell too, with all new open fermentation. So we're changing it. But long way to answer your question is, I would love more.
I think everyone would, but I know you're involved with it and you have the history with it. So sometimes, just like every now and then, sometimes you're like, I gave the subtle nudge to kind of head in that direction.
Well, absolutely. And then you can say, I kind of did something there. I kind of did something.
That's awesome. But we're an hour and 15 in, and I know we have another show that comes on after us. I don't want to jump too lean into their time too much or anything like that. But it was awesome having you on again, Fred.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much for coming on and discussing the barrel aging techniques and everything like that, and everything else going on there with the expansion, which I think is really unique compared to a lot of other places. Because, like I said, when you're talking about the rick houses and building those, that's something that's not a lot of other places are planning on doing. Basically having producing 5,000 barrels a year and being able to let that sit. Sometimes just having 3 to 5, like we had Blake on the other week, someone just having 3,000 to 5,000 barrels is exciting in general for someone on that range. So you're really going to be punching up the level in the next 5 to 10 years of what's there. So I'm really excited for what will be coming out of the distillery. So thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, the next time we do this, it'd be fun to do it either during construction or come down from Green Bay, and you and I can be at the distillery, and we can maybe do a walkabout, and we can have Mike and Ben just kind of weighing in. Or if you want to do a big planning thing, once we get out of all this, let's all of us meet out there, and we can do a show from there midnight.
I think that's
That'd
something.
be fantastic.
I'm in.
Yeah.
There we go.
Mike's already half in the car.
Yeah. I like a road trip.
There we go. Where in Missouri are you again?
Kansas City.
Kansas City.
Yeah.
I just sent down hand sanitizer that I made for my daughter's friends and her boyfriend, all in Kansas City.
Yeah. And they do carry the Dancing Goat down here, which I was very pleasantly surprised to find.
We're pretty much, if you take Highway 70, we're not too many exits off Highway 70, but little places between St. Louis and Kansas City, up and down 70.
Yeah.
So you can find us in Columbia and little burgs in and around between y'all too. So
you found it down by you, didn't you, Ben?
What's that?
I've been excited to find you here in South Carolina recently. So
good.
You're at our local store here in my town, and yeah.
Well, that's good. I appreciate you guys picking up a bottle. I really do. Do. We all do.
No, but we'll take a look at stopping out there at some point, and I know without even saying it for you guys, I know we're tempted about that. Once you get the Rick House coming to distill a barrel and letting it sit and see what happens, I already know we're excited about that.
Yeah.
We're trying to be able to provide experiences for people that you might not be able to get just ordinarily. I mean, it's really cool to have an exclusive bottle, one of 200, that is absolutely cool and special. It's stepping up into another level to say, hey, come spend a day with us.
Yeah,
and that's buy lunch.
And that really makes a difference, because I know we know a couple places down in Texas that do that. It's almost like they're putting out. I know Bacconi says like a master class. We know some people that have been there, and that extra level of knowledge and interpersonalship really sells the brand to a lot of people. Once you see someone take that experience to heart and be able to explain it to other people and be like, see, these people give a shit about what they're doing, and they're happy to bring you into the fold, explain it, help you understand it, and help you do something with it.
That's why I think the coolest person is, that if you ever find yourself at a bar, some of the coolest people that are strangers when you sit down next to them is somebody that's super excited about what they do for a living, as long as they're not going to, completely dominate the conversation. But if they're a lawyer, if they're somebody that, is an accountant, make beer, make spirits, and you're excited about what you do, that's a really fun 30 minutes. Okay. And that's what we're trying to be, in the industry is, the next step is to share your story. The next step is to pass it forward to the next generation and to offer opportunities, not in isolation, for people to come and be part of the family.
So once this thing all dies down, we'll probably be working on something like that to set that up and come down there. So
well, if you ever want to call in once, call in sick sometime on a Tuesday, Patrick, and just show up in Cambridge sometime in the next few months once we get out from under this.
It might be a Monday. I have relatives that live in Madison, so I mean there might be a day or two that I'm ill. starting Friday night and progressing into maybe Wednesday. I don't know, that happens sometimes. So thank you for being on, Fred. Ben and Mike, thanks for being on as always. And from our den to yours, remember, it's not the size of the den that matters, it's the love of whiskey. Cheers, everyone out there.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Clap your hands. Some more.